Hey, this is Sandeep with Sand Compounding. Is gold really a great investment? People run behind the covers during recession and during economic downturn to buy gold, considering that's a safe asset. Really, gold is not a productive asset, and none other than great Warren Buffett, the legendary investor, had substantiated that with doing a comparative study between a $10,000 invested in gold against a $10,000 invested in US stock market. And the results were a clear eye-opener. Warren Buffett calls it as a completely non-productive asset. It does not produce anything. Like stocks, at least gives dividends, and it has capital appreciation. And there are countries where gold is a big asset, considered as a big investment. Like India had spent close to $300 billion plus over last 10 years in buying gold. And take a look at this video. You will find it very informative because this clearly shows gold is not a great investment. Take a look.
I would like you to again imagine yourself back on March 11th of 1942. And as I say, things were looking bad in the European theater as well as what was going on in the Pacific. But everybody in this country knew America was going to win the war. I mean, it was, you know, we'd gotten blindsided, but we were going to win the war, and we knew that the American system had been working well since 1776. So if you'll turn to the next slide, I'd like you to imagine that at that time you had invested $10,000 and you put that money in an index fund. We didn't have index funds then, but you in effect bought the S&P 500. Now I would like you to think a while, and do not change the slide here for a minute. I'd like you to think about how much that $10,000 would now be worth if you just had one basic premise, just like in buying a farm, you buy it to hold throughout your lifetime and you look to the output of the farm to determine whether you made a wise investment. You look to the output of the apartment house to decide whether you made a wise investment if you buy an small apartment house to hold for your life. And let's say instead you decided to put the $10,000 in and hold a piece of American business and never look at another stock quote, never listen to another person give you advice or anything of the sort. I want you to think how much money you might have now. And now that you've got a number in your head, let's go to the next slide and we'll get the answer. You'd have $51 million and you wouldn't have had to do anything. You wouldn't have to understand accounting. You wouldn't have to look at your quotations every day like I did that first day. I'd already lost $3.75 by the time I came home from school. All you had to do was figure that America was going to do well over time, that we would overcome the current difficulties, and that if America did well, American business would do well. You didn't have to pick out winning stocks. You didn't have to pick out a winning time or anything of the sort. You basically just had to make one investment decision in your life. And that wasn't the only time to do it. I mean, I could go back and pick other times that would work out to even greater gains. But as you listen to the questions and answers we give today, just remember that the overriding question is, how is American business going to do over your investing lifetime? I would like to make one other comment because it's a little bit interesting. Let's say you'd taken that $10,000 and you'd listen to the prophets of doom and gloom around you, and you'll get that constantly throughout your life. And instead you'd use the $10,000 to buy gold. Now for your $10,000, you would have been able to buy about 300 ounces of gold. And while the businesses were reinvesting in more plants and new inventions came along, you would go down every year and look in your safe deposit box, and you'd have your 300 ounces of gold, and you could look at it and you could fondle it, and you could, I mean, whatever you wanted to do with it. But it didn't produce anything. It was never going to produce anything. And what would you have today? You would have 300 ounces of gold, just like you had in March of 1942, and it would be worth approximately $400,000. So if you decided to go with a non-productive asset, gold, instead of a productive asset, which actually was earning more money and reinvesting and paying dividends and maybe purchasing stock, whatever it might be, you would now have over 100 times the value of what you would have had with a non-productive asset. In other words, for every dollar you have made in American business, you'd have less than a penny of gain by buying in the store of value, which people tell you to run to every time you get scared by the headlines or something of the sort. It's just remarkable to me that we have operated in this country with the greatest tailwind at our back that you can imagine. It's an investor's haven. I mean, you can't really fail at it unless you buy the wrong stock or just get excited at the wrong